Welcome to the This Gal Travels podcast, the show that helps you travel more, travel easier, and travel better. I'm Trina, and today I'm going to be talking about traveling while fat or tall in Southeast Asia, and I'm going to give you some strategies that you can use along the way. My best pro traveler tip is always at the end, so make sure you listen to the show all the way through. Let me start off by saying Southeast Asia is an absolutely wonderful place to travel through. Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, and we even went to Myanmar. At the time, it was safe and fine to do so. But it's a wonderful area to travel through. But if you're big being wide or big being tall, it does present some interesting challenges because most of the people over there are of smaller stature. And there are definitely some challenges, but the minor challenges are insignificant into how awesome it is a place to visit. And there's two things that make it awesome. One, it's just flat out awesome. Two, it's a very affordable version of awesome. So it has a double whammy. And so I'm going to talk about what it's like to travel there being big in one way or another. And I am going to reference my husband on this one because it's very appropriate. He passed away last year, if you don't know that part of my story. But I'm going to let you know that he was a 6-foot tall black guy. That's 182 centimeters. And it's relevant for any stories I tell. So I'm going to start off and let you know that right off the bat. Things like we were at the Temple Borobudur in Indonesia, and he literally was tall enough that he was a full head taller than everybody. I could look over the whole crowd and not just see the top of his head, see his full head and the top of his shoulders. So that's how different it is when you're traveling there. On the flip side of that, I'm going to zoom us over to Africa for just half a second. In Benin, Tim was actually usually the shortest guy in the room. Not everyone there was super tall, not every single person, but there were a lot of very tall people there. And so Tim went from being the tallest guy to being the shortest guy in our travels. So that's just an interesting little fact and a little bit of perspective. But let's get into the tips and tricks for traveling when you're fat or tall in Southeast Asia. First off, it starts right off the bat with your packing. Okay, so you're packing, and sometimes you'll watch those how to pack things, and then you have some, small traveler, whether, I shouldn't say small, I should say petite, or even average size. But there's a couple of things to remember when you're packing your clothes. First of all, someone that's an average or smaller size can always get something when they arrive. If they forget something or if they find the weather is different than they expected, they can say, oh, I'll pick it up when I get there. Well, we can't do that. If you're in Southeast Asia, if you are too big or too tall, you're going to have real trouble finding any kind of quick replacement clothing. Now, if you're in a major city, like if you're in Bangkok, sure, you can find it. But the only other places you're going to find that kind of size is an area that has like a tourist industry, a very high tourist industry. And even a tourist industry may or may not do it. But like if you're on the beaches in southern Thailand, then certainly you're probably going to find a t-shirt shop that'll have something for you. But on the average, you're not going to just be able to go and assume that you can find that piece of clothing. Like if you ended up traveling and it was colder than you expected, because maybe you went somewhere that was kind of elevated, you can't say, oh, I'll just buy a jacket. You might find something, you might not. So that means you've got to take everything with you. So you can only be so minimalist in your packing. The nice thing about that region is it doesn't really get cold. So you don't have to take like cold weather gear. But the other thing is when some people are showing you minimalist packing and they start out and their clothes are smaller than yours. I mean, just flat out the size of your clothes is bigger than the people you're seeing do those demonstrations. So don't expect to get into the micro-size bag with everything you need. Now, I will tell you from experience that you should still be able to get into a carry-on. On average, I find I can easily pack in a carry-on for pretty much any length of trip. In fact, I'm a carry-on and a backpack. And I'll talk about the backpack in just half a sec. But really, you should just need a carry-on. But don't think about going into a micro carry-on. Don't worry about getting the smallest of the small. Your clothes just aren't going to let you do that. So I still say pack minimal, but pack smart and pack what you need. Because between not being able to buy something when you get there and the size of your clothes, you just need a realistic size suitcase. This little bit here is just a travel tip. It doesn't exactly have to do with being fat or tall, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. Is, as I say, try and keep your packing to a carry-on and a backpack. Now, the reason you want the backpack, whether you take a lot of electronics with you or not, I obviously have to carry my laptop and stuff with me. But you always want one bag that you keep with you on your person no matter how you're traveling. And that's so because your carry-on is going to get tossed, it's going to be a thing that gets shoved under the bus. You don't want everything in there, okay? And also, like if you are, especially if you're going around Indonesia, and I love Indonesia. Indonesia is an awesome country. But you'll sometimes take these little island hopper flights, and what was a carry-on on your international flight might be something you have to check on an island hopper flight. So you always want to have one bag that you keep with you. And the other trick, I'm giving you the pro traveler tips a little early in this one today, but you're still going to get something at the end. Don't worry. But the other trick is, no matter what happens, always keep a change of clothes and a few extra pair of underwear in the backpack or carry-on that you bring with you. Because if anything happens to that bag that got checked or anything like that, you never want to be stranded without clothes. And that goes for anyone of any size. That has nothing to do with the fat and tall thing. Although, again, if something did happen, it would be easier for an average or small person to replace their clothes, see? But always carry, everyone should always carry extra set of clothing in the bag that they're always going to keep with them. Also, that's going to be the one that holds all your electronics and that sort of thing too. Oh, and by the way, for Southeast Asia, get a bag with wheels. Don't worry about getting the backpack or backpack, and definitely get the wheels. I recommend the 4-wheel ones that spin in all directions. They're much easier, but get a bag with wheels. They have enough pavement around there that it makes sense, and it's useful in pretty much all the situations there. In the last episode, I talked about choosing your bag based on your destination, and Southeast Asia is definitely a destination for wheeled luggage. And then there's the airplane. You might need a seatbelt extender, and if you do, just ask for it. Don't be shy, don't be embarrassed. You are who you are, you're big, so what? You are awesome, and just be polite when you ask. End of story. So once you're in Southeast Asia, one of the things they do really well is street food. And sometimes it's just street food, like literally any time of day street food, and sometimes you're going to be at a night market and there's going to be all these foods to sample. First of all, don't be on a diet when you go traveling. Just enjoy it. Those of us that are on the fat side, and I'm not talking about tall at this moment, although the tall people might enjoy food too, is that you enjoy food. And so enjoy yourself, indulge. And if you are feeling a little guilty or a little worried about your weight, don't worry, you're going to be doing so much walking that it's going to burn off anything. But honestly, just enjoy yourself. This is not the time to worry about it. Don't even think about it. Be yourself, enjoy yourself. The one warning I have about the street food places or the night markets is a lot of times they'll have these kind of flimsy plastic chairs and, or they'll have a little stool. And, I'm going to tell you right now, don't worry, they'll hold you. However, if there's any doubt that they're going to hold you or not, the people who own the food places will generally be happy to help you stack a couple of chairs or a couple of stools to make you more certain and more comfortable. That, or they'll find you a sturdier chair. And to be honest, most of them they're not going to be pointing and making fun at you. But they might be honest in, oh, you're big, you need an extra chair, or we need to stack these for you. Don't take someone saying you're big as offensive if it's not meant that way. One of my readers over on the blog mentioned that she had gone to Thailand and she found that the locals didn't give her a hard time about her weight. Not at all. In fact, she said, as I have said, they were very, very matter of fact about it, but that some other travelers did. And I think she was indicating that they were more European travelers, but I don't care if they're European, American, or whatever. Anyone giving someone trouble about their weight is not just an ugly traveler, they're an ugly person, okay? And they are not worth spit. So absolutely, anyone that gives you a hard time, flat out ignore them. Although I got to tell you about this with regards to the furniture, because every other country that we went to over there had normal size furniture. Might not have been the sturdiest, but it was normal. And I say it's not the sturdiest because, like, I'm here in Ghana right now, and their plastic chairs have metal legs because the people here are sturdier. But over in Southeast Asia, they're pretty much straight, plastic, just plastic. And that's why you end up stacking them. But the furniture in Vietnam is the exception. The people in Vietnam are on the whole, they're fairly small. They're of small build. And they were the one country where the furniture was actually, I would say, almost child size. They actually had a shrunk down version of the furniture. And it was a challenging thing because there were places because Tim wasn't very flexible. And so like getting up and down off of a low stool for him was difficult. And there were places he could not go eat at the sidewalk restaurant because it was too difficult for him. And so Vietnam has very small furniture. If you go to a place in Vietnam and they have some small and some larger furniture, that definitely means that they're expecting Western visitors. If you go to a place and it has all the small furniture, it's a strictly local place. It doesn't mean you're not welcome. It just means they're not catering to a Western audience. But yeah, Vietnam actually has kind of miniature furniture because they just don't need bigger furniture. Okay, so we've been leaning on more on the if you're fat, but if you're tall, you're going to have a different set of issues. As I say, Tim was 6 feet tall, and I am 5'7". So that is 170 centimeters, I think. Okay, and the thing I found is that I'm about the tallest person they plan for in pretty much any of the countries in Southeast Asia. When we were in Indonesia, we were in an area called Tanah Toraja, up on the island of Sulawesi. We were at a market, and it was covered in a tent thing, and the canvas kind of drooped down, and I didn't have to duck, but Tim had to stay hunched over for the entire walk through the market. Well, he could stand up once in a while, but he kept having to hunch down to get under the canvas. When it came to the shower in the apartment in Vietnam, they had it raised. It was one of those where you could raise the thing up and down, but they had set it in such a way that the maximum height it could go accommodated my height, and that was it. And so fortunately it had the little wand that you could take off, and Tim could use it that way. But he had no chance at 6 feet tall. So 5'7" is about the tallest that they plan for. So if you're much taller than that, you are going to have to do some ducking. And I'm talking, there are just flat out doorways that you are going to have to duck through. We stayed on Flores Island in Indonesia. We stayed at this one place that we hadn't planned to stay there, but it was sort of an emergency stay. I'll tell you about that adventure in a few minutes. But the door, Tim had to do a full duck to get under the door. And same in Malaysia. We were at a place in Georgetown, I think it is, and he had to do a full duck to get under the door. So if you're tall, plan on hunching down a whole lot. And well, this was one that Tim was both tall and big, and so we were in Indonesia, and this is good. It goes back to the people being blunt but not trying to be offensive. And this guy, we get in an elevator, and there's this other guy, one guy that worked there, and another guest. And the guy that looked at Tim, he was not even up to my shoulder, so he was a fairly short person. And he looked at Tim, and he kind of did the look up and look down And he looked back up at him and said, "You're big." And there was a moment of silence, the pin dropped, and then we all just busted out laughing because it was just true. Okay, and so yeah, you're going to experience some interesting things when you go to Southeast Asia. You might want to check when you're looking at hotels, if you're tall, check how big the beds are. See if they say like extra long bed, or kind of look for that feature when you're looking at hotels. If they say extra long bed, you're in a good place. But definitely watch your head. So some of the coolest things to do in Southeast Asia require you to be in good shape. There's hiking, there's kayaking, there's all sorts of things that require some physical activity. And some fat people are in good shape and some are not. This was kind of the beginning of our trip, and I can't say we were in the greatest shape when we left. The more we traveled, the more in shape we got just from traveling all the time. But we weren't in the best shape when we started out. So the smart thing here is to know your limits. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go try things and push yourself, but don't get yourself into serious trouble either. As I say, be smart about it. Like there was a hike that was supposed to be up to a village. Now, the one guy had warned me about the hike, but I was trying to get out of him, this was before we fully booked it, and I was trying to get out of him, well, how hard is it and how far is it really? And in the end, he said it was like 2 to 3 kilometers, and I thought, well, Tim can handle that, but it was also steep. And then it was also, when we got there, it was also raining, and we didn't know, it turned out it was more like 6 or 7 kilometers, and that was a hike we ended up abandoning. We were not ready for it. We would have gotten into serious trouble had we tried to do it. Oh, and if I did not mention this at the beginning of this, but Tim was also mostly blind throughout the trip. Not as bad at the beginning of our trip, but he was well beyond legally blind. So if I say he had difficulty with something, there's that additional factor. But yeah, between the difficulty of the hike and the fact that it was longer than we thought it was, more difficult, and it was raining, all sorts of problems, we skipped it. It's okay to skip something if you discover that it is beyond your ability. Now, there was another time where we went kayaking, and he automatically had a guide with him. And the guy running the thing, he offered to be in the boat with me, but I kind of wanted to steer it. And I thought, okay. And I did great the first half of the trip. I was so excited. I was steering really good. First time doing a kayak, and I was maneuvering that thing. I was doing great. But then on the way back, it was the equivalent of going uphill on the way back, or going against the current on the way back. And I just, we had already been out for half the day. I was already kind of, tired. And then to come back and having to be 3 times harder, I hadn't anticipated that. But fortunately, the leader of the group was also solo in his boat, so he just came over and joined me, and we made it back okay. But I was exhausted. I was truly exhausted after that one. I had no idea the back was going to be harder than the out. But one of the tricks is talk to your guides, talk to the people helping you. Try and figure out before you get there whether it's too hard, but also don't let everyone underestimate you either. That was one of my things, is everyone underestimated Tim, and he did a lot of things, okay? But don't let them underestimate you, but do talk to them about it. And worst case, I say, is you can always go up to it, and if you sit there and say, yeah, no, I can't do this, you can always go back out. Make sure that you have a way out. But talk to your guides and stay within your reasonable abilities. Push yourself some, but stay within reason if you're one of those people that's not in great shape when you set out on this adventure. You don't have to do absolutely everything. As I say, it's a balance between pushing yourself and not getting yourself into trouble. Be smart. Oh, and since Southeast Asia is all about beaches and islands and cool stuff like that, and it's a tropical weather, so it's going to be hot and kind of pretty much humid and all that good stuff too, do not let the fear of how you look in shorts or a bathing suit stop you from going. Do not let it stop you from wearing shorts and a bathing suit. Be comfortable, okay? Just be comfortable, be you. And, the locals aren't going to care. Most people aren't going to care. They're going to see that you're there, you're having fun, and they're going to be with you. And anyone who has a problem with it, screw them. You be you, you do you, you don't need them. Their opinion doesn't matter. You go, you have fun, okay? Southeast Asia is awesome. And there are so many ways to have fun. It doesn't all have to be beach fun. I loved the Buddhist temples in the caves. That was one of my favorite things. But there are so many things there. Just go enjoy yourself. And you know what? Sometimes your size might draw some attention, whether it's because you're tall or fat, it doesn't matter. You know, a lot of times it's just curiosity or sometimes surprise. Roll with it, laugh at it. And your pro traveler tip for today, with regards to Southeast Asia, and if you are fat or tall, this is the big tip. Just go. Do not let your size hold you back or delay you at all. Southeast Asia is such an awesome trip, and they can handle you. Even Vietnam, with its miniature furniture, can handle you. You know what? You're going to go, you're going to have an awesome time, and you are going to come back with some awesome stories. Relax, enjoy, and have a great trip.